August 1st is National Girlfriend Day, and I didn't know this. I always typically knew it as Swiss Independence Day, but once my girlfriend very patiently reminded me, I decided to 3D print her a completely thought through, 110% thought through mug here. And I'm going to show you guys how to make the same model under tinkercad so you can 3D print it yourself. So what you need to do is go to tinkercad.com and create an account, and it's a free account to make, pretty easy to set up. Once you're on your dashboard, you can just click Create New Design, and it's going to open a new project with the world's weirdest title here. Now, what I'm going to do first, here's the area that we're working from. What I'm going to do first is change the grid to work in inches. And I'm going to make the whole grid a square foot, so it's going to be 12 inches by 12 inches. And this just makes it a lot easier for me to work with, knowing exactly the dimensions I'm working with. So the first thing I need to do is create the mug base. So I'm going to grab this cylinder object, and I'm going to change its dimensions. I want it to be 4 inches. I want its radius to be 4 inches. So 4 inches on both sides. I'm going to move this in the middle. And I'm going to make this 3.5 inches tall. So now I have my mug base here. You'll notice that because this is a modeling software, they're doing a little bit of optimizing by adding these extra lines, so this has a lot more faces. What I'm going to do, since we have plenty of CPU power, I'm going to maximize the sides to 64 so that it looks much more round. Again, this is what it looked like before, and you can increase that to 64. So this is the main base that we're going to work with. Now, the first thing I want to do next, pretend I didn't say that. I'm going to grab another cylinder, and I'm going to use this cylinder to cut a hole out of the first cylinder so that we get this hollow area in the middle. So this cylinder is going to go right here. I'm going to move it up. I'm going to change its color so I can see it a little better. And I'm going to change its dimensions. It's going to be 3.5 inches for its radius. Let me find the other one. It's going to be 3.5 inches, and I'm going to drag it on top of the mug, directly on top of the orange part. Now what I'm going to do is click on this circle, this gray dot here, so I can edit the height, and this is also going to be 3.5 inches tall. So it's the same height as our orange base, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the green one, and I'm going to click on this arrow and drag it down. Now I don't want to drag it down all the way. I'm going to leave about this much room. So this space between this line and my mouse is how much thickness you're going to have at the bottom of the mug. That's a lot of PLA, but I really don't mind. This is really easy to print. But if you want to edit it, make it smaller, you can. But now that we have, and the only thing is it also looks like it's not quite centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the green one, and I'm going to use the arrow keys that lets you move it around. And right now that looks more centered. So now it's ready to go. I'm going to click on the green cylinder, which we're going to use to carve the hole, this hole here. And I'm going to select hole so that basically we can signal to Tinkercad that this is what we're going to use to carve a hole out of this other object. I'm going to shift click on the orange cylinder so that they're both selected together, and I'm going to click this group button up here. And so now we have the interior of the mug. Now I wanted to show you how to do the group button because we're going to need a lot of that later, but for now I'm actually going to ungroup that because we're going to need this orange cylinder completely intact for now. So we're going to leave that kind of transparent cylinder there, and we're going to add other things first before we finalize it and, carve out the center. But that's how you do that. The next thing we're going to do, I'm going to scroll down here and grab a torus. This is going to be the handle. So the first thing I'm going to do with this torus is I'm going to click F so that my camera is centered around it. And I'm going to change the angle to make it 90. Make sure it's exactly 90 so that we don't get any mistakes. When I first tried to 3D print it, I somehow got like an 88-degree angle. So don't do that. Don't be like me. And I'm going to drag this up. Now, really, the other dimensions for the torus do not matter to me, but what I want to make sure is that, and by clicking on this corner, this gray, I think oh, never mind. Ignore the black squares, but the gray squares will just give you the dimensions. I'm going to click on one of these back gray squares, and I'm going to change this torus to be a half an inch wide. Now, that's really the only dimension I was thinking about when I made this design here. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this bigger so that I can make it like a handle for the mug, because that's what this torus is going to be used for. It's going to be the handle for the mug. And really, it needs to go halfway in like that. And I'm going to make it a little bit taller, drag it out a little bit more, make it taller again. And I'm going to use the arrow keys to keep adjusting its position as I go. I believe that is good for my handle. I'm just going to go to the top, make sure it's centered, which it really is not, so I'm going to use the right arrow key. So that looks better. Yeah, I think that is the correct center position. So we have the handle right there. Now here's why we need here's why we needed this orange cylinder intact. What we're going to do is we're going to use this to carve a hole out of the handle. But we need a copy of this orange cylinder because this cylinder is perfect. If I were to click hole and then try to use it to carve the handle, I mean, obviously I no longer have the base of the mug to work with. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to click on the orange cylinder, click this duplicate button, and now with the duplicate that's selected, I'm going to click hole. So now you get this weird mix of colors. One is the duplicate is hole, while the original is still orange. And since the position is the exact same, tinkercad is kind of struggling to render it. I'm going to shift click the handle, and I'm going to click group. If you do this correctly, the handle is now carved out like that. Now we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to add text, completely well thought through text, just like what I have here, though you could of course make it even more intelligent. I'm going to change the angle to 90. If you ever struggle to get the angle right, just hold down shift and it will give you perfect angles like that. So here's my text. I'm going to first do the word favorite, all caps, favorite. And I don't like the multi-language font, so I'm going to change that to sans. Move this back up. And now let's just move it into place, get it by the mug before we do some resizing, which we'll be doing a lot of resizing. Remember, to move the object up, the arrow keys don't work. You have to use this pointy triangle, black triangle cone thing here. So I'm going to move. All right, it's in position. The text is in position, but now let's shrink it down. I want the text to be 1 inch tall, and I want the text to be a half an inch wide. But with those two dimensions set, I don't care about the length of it, so I'm going to go ahead and shrink that down. I just want it 1 inch tall and half an inch wide. So basically I want all the text to be able to overlap with the mug base here. So this is not going to work. So I'm going to keep shrinking it down. I'm going to make this smaller. That should be better. I'm going to move it. And I don't want to move it too far inwards either because actually, like I'm going to show you at the end of this video, the letters are going to be printed separately. They appear all together on the mug, but they're going to be printed separately. We're just going to create the model first. So that we're getting close. Most of the letters are overlapping, but F and the E have a bit too much space to them. So now let's move it back one more time. Or no, let's actually just shrink it down. So this part you're going to have to do quite a bit on your own. Just getting those letters exact. All right, so right here, I'm at a spot that I like. for the most part. Now there's still not quite enough for the F and the E, so I want to move this text in a little bit more, but then it makes the O, the R, the I way too thin. And those letters are going to be glued separately. They're going to be 3D printed separately. So the reason why it's snapping so large is because down here the grid is set to snap to 1/8 of an inch. So for more precise stuff, I'm going to change it to 1/64. And now I don't make the O and the R too small, but now all my letters are finally all overlapping with the main orange sphere. So there's the word favorite. Now, it looks like some of the dimensions got mixed up. No, it's still 1 inch tall. Ah, so now it's whatever that is in inches. So I'm going to change this back to a 1/2 inch, make it a little thicker. And with 1/2 inch, I can move it back even more. So really, like I said earlier, I only want to make sure this is a 1 inch tall and the text is for the most part a 1/2 inch wide. So I'm good with this. We're going to do the same thing that we did for the handle for the text. I'm going to click on this orange sphere and click duplicate. I'm going to click whole. You know, you did it right because the original is orange, but now the whole is overlapping with that. I'm going to shift click the text and I'm going to click group. Do it correctly, and the text is now carved out in that round area just like this. Now, the reason we're doing this is because when we print the text separately, we're going to print it on this side flat. And by making the back of the text round, it's going to be incredibly easy to glue it onto the mug. So now let me just finish the last little bit of text, and I'm not going to make you watch all of that. I'll just do it here. I just finished adding the extra text at the bottom, GF, and then I just added a heart as well. I just went under the heart shape, dragged it, rotated it, and did the same step. I just duplicated the cone, the cylinder, and carved it out of the heart so that the heart also has this round curvature on the interior. So why are we doing it like this? So the thing is, if you were to try to plug this model into a 3D printer, there would be a lot of problems. 3D printers print from the bottom, side to side, and then up. So the 3D printer is going to print in layers starting from the bottom to the top. And any single time a 3D printer encounters a part of the model that's hanging over nothing, like these letters, you can see if I zoom in here, these letters, you can just imagine as the metal nozzle is spitting out all the plastic, and the nozzle reaches this layer where my mouse is. You can imagine it's going to try to go side to side, but here it's trying to pour plastic over nothing. That's a big problem for 3D printing. Same with the handle. The nozzle will do just fine up until the mouse reaches this level, and then it would try to print the handle here, but it has nothing underneath. So we constructed the model and it's all in shape, but now we're going to go ahead and move parts of it off so that it's more 3D printed, 3D printable, and you're just going to be able to glue the handle and the words separately. So here's what I'm doing. First I'll start with the handle. So I'm going to move the handle off. I'm going to make sure it's exactly rotated by 90 degrees or -90. Again, be careful with this. If you need to click shift to get exact readings, that's fine. But I messed this up the first time I did this, and I had my handle at a very weird angle, which made me have to start over on it. So the handle's there on the ground. Now this is actually kind of hard to 3D print just because it's technically kind of round. So you're not really starting on a flat surface. Like this mug, really easy to 3D print. You have this huge flat surface to start from, but this is not a flat surface to start from. So what we're going to do to make the printer's job easier is I'm going to go to the box, and I'm going to make the box size a little bit bigger until it can cover the handle. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drag the box up until it's just barely covering the handle. In fact, I'm going to switch it to whole so I can see that better. And I want the box to just cover a tiny bit of the top of the handle. So like that. That's perfect to me. What I'm going to do now is shift click on the handle and click group. And now with that box, I just created a flat edge on the top of the handle. So well, now what I'm going to do is flip this over. Nope, I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to flip this. And now I just made this much easier to print because I provided a flat surface for the handle to print on. And it's really subtle. It's obviously it's not the same as the other side, but it makes it a lot easier to print and it's not very noticeable. So there's your handle. It's going to lay down on the ground like that so we can 3D print it. And we're going to do the exact same thing with the text. I'm going to grab the text. And now that I know that, now that we have it correctly carved out, I'm going to move it out, rotate it. And again, we had to construct it on the mug first. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to position it and carve out this here. We're doing this so that we can glue the letters back on to the mug when we're done. And I've already completed the mug. It's pretty easy to do. So I'm going to move this down. And this shouldn't require any flattening. The text should already be flat, but I'll show you a way that you can check that later. I'm going to grab the heart, rotate it, move it down. And I think I'm going to go ahead and turn the snap grid back to 1/8 so I can move a little bit faster. I'm going to move this, rotate it, and move it down. Okay, and let's move everything closer together so that as this is 3D printing, it doesn't take up quite so much space on the bed. So I'm going to move the text, I'm going to move the heart, just everything's generally going to be closer together. And here is your finished result. You have all your letters at the bottom with the flat side down. This is going to make it easy for your 3D printer to actually print it. And the curvature is at the top. The handle is over here. Once again, it has the flat side that we just made a second ago so that it can print well and doesn't have to print on a round surface. And then the heart's here. Now that we're finally done with everything else, we can do what you guys probably have been dying to do all along and group these two objects together. And now you have all the parts that you need to make your mug. When you print this, you have to print the parts separately. If you want to get different colors, then obviously you can export these, the text and heart, as a different model. Like for example, like in this model, the mug is red, but the text is white. Now I didn't print it this way, but if you wanted to get that, what you can do is select the text and then the heart and then click export, and it's only going to export those three shapes. So you can click on STL and then you can go ahead and 3D print that, and then separately you can select the mug and the handle for a different color and get that model separately. And with those two files, those two STL files, you can get the two different colors, but you 3D printers probably already know that. But if you want to do it all in one color, which is what I did, then this is good to go. To export this all together, you don't even need to select everything. You can just, with nothing selected, just click export, and now it's going to include everything in your design. And so to 3D print it, you can just use one of these. I typically use STL, but you can just download one of these files and you can use that. You can send it to a service and have it 3D printed, or you can 3D print it yourself. And that's the end of my tutorial. Good luck on your well thought through mugs, and thank you for watching. Here is the finished product, and I think it turned out wonderfully. The mug printed just fine. It's very thick on the edges and in the bottom. It's very sturdy. The handle I glued on, and there's a little bit of gap here, but that's fine because it's really not going anywhere. And you can see some glue residue because I used hot glue to put on the letters, and even though hot glue is not the best, it beats super glue, which for some reason in my experience really does not work well on PLA. But otherwise, I'm really satisfied with this. It was really easy to glue on the letters and the heart just because of that curvature that's in there that lets you glue them on a round surface.